Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am Zach, one of the hosts, and the other host is Chris. What's up, buddy? Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you, Zach. Guten Morgen. Bonjour. Welcome. Great to see you, my friend. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining around the world. Uh, yeah. And
It's been a
all
while.
it's been a while. I think we've got a few more countries. We were both of us busy and working and keeping up with our lives and our professional careers. So yeah, but we're
Man,
back. Yeah.
no joke. Yeah, it's been a little while, but I think now, Chris, stuff starts to settle down a little bit, work-wise anyways, work and travel. And so we can hopefully start jumping back in and getting more of our episodes out. We have some really awesome guests coming up with us over the next couple of months that we cannot wait to share with you, to include behind the scenes folks, and to me, a legendary Hollywood producer. So we can't wait to
Most
share that
excellent.
news with you. Yeah, as soon as we
Yeah.
can. So we're really, really looking forward to all that. Really excited to welcome some people back to the podcast as well that we haven't had on with us in a while, and kind of get an update on where things are going and how things are, what's going on in their life and their careers and all. That'll be a lot of fun. So, but today on this episode, we're here to catch up and recap and review the last 5 episodes very briefly with the episodes, and talk about our overall thoughts of this first season of Ahsoka. Because as we discussed prior, Chris, I have a feeling based on the way they ended it, and yes, there's spoilers ahead, so beware, that they definitely left it open to do more.
Did seem like they left it open to do more. You know how I felt at the when I was watching that last episode? I didn't realize it was the last episode because I wasn't certain how many episodes were in Ahsoka, but I'm watching it, right, and there were parts of the last episode that were where the production was great and the choreography was great, and so and the sequences and the action and fight sequence was great. But as I was watching it, I was like, well, this kind of feels like it's the last episode. And then I think I searched on the internet. I was like, how many episodes are in Ahsoka? Because this feels like the last one, but it just feels like it left a lot out there, right? I left a lot undone. And yes, it was the last episode. So
Yeah, at least
yeah.
for this season, because I think they're going to do more, like we said. But yeah, so welcome
Yeah.
to Retro Podcast, everybody. We are a couple of nerdy guys who love all things nerdy, sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, everything in between, a little pop culture. If this is your first time joining us, again, welcome from all over the globe and all of our listeners. We have listeners now and or viewers as well in France and in Spain. So welcome, bonjour. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate that. And if you haven't checked us out on Facebook and Instagram, be sure to go on there and follow us there for all of our latest updates, episode announcements, celebrity guest announcements, and so much more, as well as you can find us on your favorite podcast platform if you haven't already. And if you've only ever listened to us, we have video versions of this. As a matter of fact, Chris, when we had Liz on with us, I didn't realize this until after I posted it, but that was our 50th video on YouTube.
We've done 50
Yeah,
videos.
isn't that insane? I know, because
Whoa.
because because we didn't originally do our podcast and video, right? A lot of it was
Right.
audio only, and we're closing in on we're getting close to 100 episodes total.
Whoa.
So yeah, pretty crazy.
Whoa, we'll have yeah. Yeah, when we get to our 100th episode, I don't know, something special we should do.
Yeah, it's funny. Quite a while back, I went back and just listened to a couple snippets of our very first episode,
Mhm.
and I remember listening to it. And A, my microphone sounded terrible, but B, I talked as if I was in slow motion. It was like, well, hello there, everybody.
Oh, really?
This
Yeah.
is the first step, but yeah, it sounded bizarre. I don't know. I don't know what was going on with me. It was, I guess, just because I wasn't sure what to say or whatever. But we've come a long way, my friend. Long
Oh,
way.
we have.
But yeah, it's great. It's been a great journey. And for those of you who have been listening or watching to us from the very beginning, we very much appreciate it. And all those of you who have joined us along the way, we also appreciate that as well. We just love talking and sharing about things we like and enjoy. We love talking with celebrity guests and other folks we've had on to learn about them and their careers and their life and share their passions with us. It's really an absolute treasure and a treat. And I tell you, Chris, we've had an opportunity to meet and talk with people that I never thought we would prior to doing this podcast.
Yeah, we certainly have and learned so much as we've talked to them. We've learned so much more about the shows we loved, so much more about Star Trek. So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Really.
Really quickly, before we jump into Ahsoka,
Mhm.
we're going to do that here in just a second. I
Yeah.
thought it'd be fun to share because I'm kind of doing it now. Like, what are you reading right now? Because I know you're an avid
Oh
reader.
yeah, yeah.
So what are you reading right now?
Okay. So there's a couple books that I've got that are Star Wars, since we'll talk about Star Wars first. Star Wars Dark Legends. So that'll be I haven't started it, but it'll be kind of neat to go through and see that the Dark Legends there.
Are
Then
they
there's
short stories?
yeah, they're
Okay, that's what I
short,
figured, like legends, right? Yeah.
yeah, they're kind of like fables, and then Star Wars uh myths and fables.
Is that written by George Lucas? Is that what it says?
Mm, George Mann, written
Oh,
by
George
George
Mann.
Mann.
All I saw was
Yeah.
George. I was like, oh, he wrote a book. Nice.
Yeah. So I've got that, and then I've picked up another one that was kind of neat that we'll both like. But The Return from by William Shatner. So that'll be fun to read
Yeah,
because
he's written a few Star Trek books.
yeah, yeah, and it'll be good to kind of read the redemption or the resurrection of James T. Kirk in that. So
Yeah.
like that. And I really like this. It's Batman and the Batman and philosophy. So I think that's great. I've already started reading this, and it's a fascinating read, and I love like reading about the ethical like dilemmas and the different ethical perspectives of Batman. So that was great. So when we revisit Batman, that'll be really really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And then I'm on book 7 of The Expanse. So
Nice.
doing that.
Yeah, that's
Doing
awesome.
that. Yeah. Yeah. The Expanse was we haven't talked too much about The Expanse, but when we get to it, we can talk about The Expanse and talk about the television show because it's pretty interesting. And the role-playing game, right? There's the
Yeah, there's a
Expanse
role-playing game. Yep, I have the book for it.
Yeah. And then and then one more. I shared this book with you a little bit before, but this is Meditations from Marcus Aurelius. So it's this is a really good translation. And I think it's the most recent translation. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But now you've got iconic books. Iconic by some of our heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am not the avid reader that you are. I will say that. I don't I'll be honest with you, I don't read nearly as much as I should. I really don't. And I do try. I have been trying and will continue to try to increase that because I think reading's important and there's lots of good things to learn from it and everything like that. So the first book that I'm reading, and I'm only reading one at a time because I can only handle one at a time. I'm not as much of a brainiac as you, Chris. I can't handle more than
No.
one book. So for me, I got to do one book at a time. And so right now, I picked up a copy of Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, Be
Oh,
Useful,
wow.
7 Tools for Life. I actually found
Yeah.
a signed copy. So this book is actually signed in the cover by Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is really awesome.
Oh,
So I'm about halfway through it. It's really, really good, very motivational, lots of his tips and tools for success in life. So I'm reading through this. And then when I'm done with that, let me pull off the other one here. Now, this isn't the signed copy, although there are signed copies, but I picked up at Barnes & Noble Patrick Stewart's memoir, Making It So. I really look forward to reading this because he's not written, I don't ever think written a book before,
Yeah.
a little on a memoir. And so it wasn't something he originally wanted to do, but I guess somebody approached him or something like that. And I guess eventually he ended up deciding to do it. And it's got some pictures in the middle of stuff from his life, but it's a story of his life, obviously a memoir. And so I look forward to reading this because he's a fascinating man.
Yeah. Oh, outstanding.
Yeah. So it should be good.
Yeah. I'm sure it will be. Yeah. Excellent.
Looking forward to
I'm
that.
sure it'll be
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. So it'll be
Yeah.
good. I'm looking forward to reading those books. And then I still got to finish my Halo book that I'm about little under halfway through, and I gotta I have read a little bit more of the Heir to the Empire, so I'm enjoying that.
Excellent.
Yeah, Timothy Zahn, incredible writer. So yeah, it should be fun. Should be fun.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it. I don't get a ton of time to read, so it does take me longer to get through books. I've
yeah,
got a bunch of books sitting over on my shelf. I can see right now of books that I do want to eventually read. One of them is called Grateful American, written by Gary Sinise, the actor.
yeah.
Yeah, really looking forward to reading that. I've got a few other books that I bought many, many years ago that I just haven't read, including one book by Brian Kilmeade called George Washington's Secret Six,
Nice.
based on true events from back during the Revolutionary War. I've got another one, The Last Man on the Moon, written by Gene Cernan, who was the last man on the moon, part of Apollo 17. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading all those eventually. And I do have another
Yeah.
Star Wars book called Death Troopers. And it's about like zombie
Oh.
stormtroopers.
Oh, you told me about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yep.
one sounds really cool.
Yeah, which is funny because in the
Hmm.
final episode of Ahsoka, we get that.
We get,
So I
yeah,
don't know
we,
if that was that idea came from that particular book that I have or not, but we'll get to that. So,
I'll bet it,
anyways,
yeah, I'll bet it maybe someone was inspired by that book because that's pretty on the nose right there.
it's really possible, really possible. So let's jump into this, Chris. We only did the first 3 episodes, and unfortunately, life happened, right? And
Yeah.
we got busy, we got things going on, family, work, travel, all that kind of stuff. It happens, right? This is not our job. This is a hobby and a passion of ours that we love sharing with you guys. And so we apologize we haven't had more time to bring you a bunch of episodes, but we promise we're going to try to get back on the horse, so to speak, and
Mhm.
start pumping out some more stuff as much as we're able to. But that being said, Chris, let's jump into this and let's go back and let's just really, really quickly kind of run through each of the episodes, starting with part 4 called Fallen Jedi.
Yeah, Fallen Jedi. And so Fallen Jedi, that's where there's a lightsaber battle by the Dark Jedi and Ahsoka. And I'm trying to remember the Balin. That's right.
Yeah, Balin. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Balin. And then
And remember, he was a former Jedi. He
yeah.
was, I believe he mentioned early in the show, right? That wasn't he was either at the Jedi temple or something like that
Mhm.
when Order 66 went down,
Yeah.
or he went into hiding or something. I can't remember specifically, but he was a Jedi at one point.
Yeah, he was. And he knew Anakin. I think he said that at some point in the series that he knew Anakin and
Yeah.
then shared that with Ahsoka. So they do have the lightsaber battle, Balin and Ahsoka. And from what I recall of there, Balin actually like he's able to propel Ahsoka off whatever ledge she's on, and she falls down into the water. And then he sees Sabine, and he's like kind of tempting. He's tempting to Sabine essentially to join them, and Sabine
Yeah.
does. Yeah,
Yep.
that one. So
Yeah, because she's driven by this idea of wanting to see her friend again, right? Because at the end of Rebels, Ezra goes off with Thrawn,
yeah,
the space whales, and that's being brought now into the show.
space whales, man.
Yeah.
Space whales. That's a
Yep.
thing.
It is. It was and is.
Was is they could make stuffed animal space whales like they make stuffed animal like or stuffed Grogu's. So that's an idea, Disney. Go ahead and make like your stuffed space whales.
Yeah, well, they got to sell merchandise, I guess, somehow. I don't know, but yeah, and so yeah, and this is also the episode I believe, right, where Morgan Elsbeth, Balin, and then Shin use that Eye of Sion, along with that huge, massive hyperspace ring to go to where they believe Thrawn is hiding
Yeah.
out, which is in another galaxy. I think the name of the planet is called Peridia.
Yeah.
In the other galaxy.
Yeah, Peridia. I believe you're right. Distant planet. Distant. It felt like a small planet, but yeah, Peridia. And so Peridia, what I got from the show was Peridia has some connection to either the origin of the Jedi or some connection to the origin of the Force. That's what I felt like they were alluding to, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some ancient like structures in Peridia, and it connects somehow with the Star Wars galaxy. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, and we talked about this before we started recording, right? How this new planet that they show up at and especially throughout the final episodes has a lot of like Lord of the Rings vibe to it as far as like the scenic views and some of the structures and everything gives it a very Lord of the Rings feel.
Yeah, it does for sure. And I like that aesthetic and I like that feel, right? As long as they can flush that out and they can um, make it a compelling world and it's a very, interesting world and you get some origin. If they can do that, then I would like it. But
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. Totally see
Yeah.
how it goes. The the next episode that we get to is called the next episode's episode 5, Shadow Warrior. And that's where really Ahsoka's been knocked down into the water. And then she gets caught between, if I'm thinking about the right episode, she gets caught between the world between worlds.
Yeah.
And then she meets Anakin. And then they've got uh, plenty of interaction going back and forth between how they were during the Clone Wars. And then it's, essentially Anakin. It's interesting, Anakin saying, "Oh, hey, here, I'm going to give you another lesson or your final lesson." And the lesson had to do with like, something to choose life or choose death. So I remember I texted you after I saw that like episode, and so I really wasn't pleased with that episode at all. And
Yeah. I did like some of the flashbacks. I
yeah,
wasn't a fan like you, Chris. I agree. I was not a fan of the scenes between Ahsoka and Anakin. I definitely think that you had a really good way of putting your
yeah,
opinion about those scenes.
yeah. I really think if they go through, it was a huge missed opportunity because I really
Yep.
think if they're bringing back Hayden Christensen, if they're bringing back the character of Anakin, this this fundamental character of Anakin Skywalker, who, at least in the original Star Wars trilogy, in the prequels, um, he's just this core thing where everything revolves around that. You and you're having Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka's master. I thought, wow, there could have been a lot more depth in their interaction, maybe some more dialogue and some conversation. It didn't have to be like a lot. We're just asking like a couple minutes, but um, in Ahsoka's got this huge gap in her mind of like, hey, why? How did my master like get? How did that happen to my master? How did he get turned into the dark side? Right? She's been wondering that for like years. That has been gnawing on her and has kind of totally altered her trajectory, like as a Jedi. But Anakin's lesson was here's the lesson, life and death. And they have a lightsaber battle and they have some flashbacks to the Clone Wars. And I've just watched that episode once. Maybe there's more depth to it, but I just really felt that bringing back Anakin, bringing back Hayden Christensen, you you could have had 30 seconds to a minute of like dialogue, just some explanation,
Yeah.
or just reflection from his part would have been nice.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes back to the idea like at the end of Clone Wars, right? Where she leaves Anakin, she walks away from him as her master.
Yeah,
And that separation of that and that cutting of that relationship of the two of them, and the walking away from the Jedi,
yeah,
which I found, which obviously is an important part of her journey as a character. And then coming into this, but you're right. I really like how you put that, a lost opportunity. It was great seeing Hayden Christensen back though.
yeah.
I think it's been awesome between Obi-Wan
Hmm.
and between Ahsoka. It's been really great seeing him back. The fans have really embraced Hayden and loved on him, and he's gotten really choked up at Star Wars Celebration was it last year? Last year's celebration when he showed up. Because when he first got the part, even for geez, I mean, like a decade or more after the movies come out, people didn't like his portrayal of Anakin. And it's like, well, he had a job. He was hired to do a job, and George wanted him to act a certain way
Yeah,
and do certain things. And people didn't, I don't think, appreciated him. And now, funny, now that the newer Star Wars movies came out, they go back and look and go, wow, not only were the prequels actually really good, even though
yeah,
they got hated on by a lot of people, but the newer Star Wars movies made them look even better.
yeah.
And I think the appreciation for the prequel trilogies went up. I always liked the prequel trilogies. There were some things about it I didn't like, but in general, I always really liked the prequel trilogy.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm a huge fan of the prequel trilogy.
Especially
Which
because
yeah.
Obi-Wan's your
Mhm.
guy,
He's
right?
my
So
guy. He's my guy.
yeah.
And so there's so much originality there in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And then when we go to well, the trilogy that shall not be named, but the
The
after
non-canon
trilogy, the
trilogy.
non-canon trilogy, I just felt
Yeah.
like, okay, it's not, there's not a connection, there's not originality there. And I feel like now that's obvious. I feel people should like really feel that's obvious. I mean, the Force Awakens, there's another Death Star, just bigger, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
It's absurd.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So at the end of Shadow Warrior, I also
Mhm.
this is where I also believe Hera, who we also know from Rebels, right? She's one of the crew of the ghost ship.
Yeah,
Um, she's able to locate Ahsoka and helps her and Huyang get to chase after um Morgan Elsbeth and Balin and Shin and everything like that in that big ring ship. And they use the space whales. I think they were called like the Purgle or some Purgil or Purgle or something like that.
yeah. Were they in the mouth of the space whale? If I'm
Yeah, they
recalling that,
ended
yeah.
up jumping into one of the largest ones, I guess, into its mouth and like rode the whale via the mouth. It's like, wow, talk about like, the story of Jonah and be swallowed by a
Oh
whale.
yeah,
Yeah, right. Like, talk about using that as an example story. Yeah.
yeah. That's right. That's right. And then when the whales uh, get to the planet, I remember the whales are like being bombarded with laser blasts or something. So that was
With mines.
with mines. That was it. Yeah.
Or no. I'm sorry. No. Yeah, it is with mines because they come out of the whale's mouth and they have mined the entry point because they know like if somebody comes and they'll be able to do that. But yeah, it was bizarre like seeing like whales in space drop out of hyperspace the way ships do. It's like that's kind of bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked to have seen, again, this is kind of nitpicky, but I'd like to have seen like with them entering that system and coming into the galaxy and all that, like something it looked different and feel different than a ship. Because it just looked
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, here comes a bunch of ships out of hyperspace. Oh, nope, just kidding, they're whales.
Yeah.
Like, talk about a missed opportunity, right? They could have made some kind of like unique entrance for the whales to come in, and they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. The whales could have like birthed out of the space, out of the water. I can't even. Uh,
I don't know either. But that would
yeah.
take us into episode number 6 called Far, Far Away.
Yeah. And that so in that one we get the first. I believe this is the first viewing of Admiral Thrawn. So Ahsoka Huyang, they get there. Sabine was taken hostage by Balin, I believe, and Lady Morgan. But
Well, no, Sabine volunteers to go
oh, that's
because they
right.
make a
Yeah.
little drug deal. It's like, hey, I will go with you or whatever, as long as I can, see Ezra or
Hmm.
allowed to find Ezra or something like that. I don't remember the specific dialogue to it, but there's like a deal that she makes.
That's right. That's right. And Sabine is freed, and then goes off on her quest to find like Ezra.
Yeah.
And then eventually finds Ezra.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the next, I don't remember if it was that episode or the next episode, but she does find Ezra. Amongst all, yeah,
I think it was that episode. I do.
that episode.
It's a little chunk of time towards the very end of the episode. I believe that she has a conversation and a big hug and embrace with Ezra, and then that's right towards the very end. I think.
Okay, yeah. And Ezra's like around a whole bunch of turtle people. I call them
Yeah.
turtle people
Yeah,
because that's right.
they're called. Yeah, they have a name, and I'm trying to think of what their name was off the
Yeah,
top of my head. But yeah, they look like little. They look like a cross between like hermit crabs and turtles.
yeah,
And they're essentially nomads, right? Because I think in the episode or in the next one, I think it's in this episode where they're set up. They have like a little encampment, right, where she finds Ezra and them, and she's brought to them by these little the Noti, the Noti or Noti is the name of them. We get them again in part 7.
yeah.
And but then it's after a while they pick up shop and then they move because they're
Yeah.
nomadic, right? So they just keep being on the move. So yeah.
Yeah. Those are so they were all right. Yeah, I guess they were all right as a new
Yeah,
species.
they were cute little things. Yeah.
Yeah,
I liked
they were
them.
cute. They were cute. So episode 7, part 7, Dreams and Madness. I That one I remember there was like an inquiry, um, where Hera is now like before the Senate committee, um, specifically there so that they can inquire with her for disobeying orders, right?
Yep.
And it's essentially, is she going to be court-martialed or not? So it just felt okay to me, just the ridiculousness of this situation. They're gonna try and court-martial her for, she's just trying to investigate the to the threats to the Republic. And
Yeah. She's doing what she feels like is her
yeah,
job, right? I
yeah.
mean, she's doing what she thinks is the right thing. And there's that one senator, I don't remember his name, but he was obnoxious. He was so smug,
Hmm.
just like, oh, well, how do what you disobeyed orders and went off and did your own little thing and blah blah. It's like, well, think about this, right? Okay. And this is kind of what I was thinking when I was watching this episode
Yeah.
was if you're the new republic, right? This new, you know, not quite, they're not called the Galactic Republic, right? But this new form of government that's trying to establish itself after the fall of the Empire, which the Empire came out of the old Galactic Republic, right? If you're a senator, I mean, you don't necessarily want like super defiant generals. I mean, you kind of do want them to kind of listen to things, but in general, no pun intended, um, don't you want leaders that kind of think for themselves a little bit and aren't just like robots that just follow orders blindly? Because isn't that kind of what the Empire does? Like
Yeah.
they use fear and manipulation and everything else, and you pretty much you do what you're told, or you're done, kind of thing. You don't want that kind of environment. I mean, wouldn't you want to have a little more freedom for your leaders to make decisions on their own, take some risks? Because by maybe taking some risks, not all, but some risks could potentially benefit and help for security. I mean, am I the only one thinking that, or did you have any of those kind of thoughts, Chris?
I totally thought that too. I mean, why limit your high-ranking officers, your general? You've got a general. Why are you limiting your general to have them not investigate threats? And I know they make that smug senator is making that argument like, oh, aren't you like really just trying to find Ezra? But you know, even so, who cares if she's trying to find Ezra? If there's like maybe some partial evidence where Ezra could be alive, and she
Yeah.
can investigate that, and then also investigate the threat. Like, who cares? You can totally do that. So I just it was just, if I did feel like that it was ridiculous that it could go that far, that the other senators would not shut down this senator. It's like,
Yeah. And is what's funny is it took C3PO
oh yeah,
to come in and shut him down. I do love it. Now I did read that Anthony Daniels did do this. He was in the suit and he did the voice work for it, obviously.
oh
So I
wow,
thought that was great. They brought
yeah,
him back in, one of the OG. And I love the Easter egg here of dropping in Senator Leia Organa. Um,
yeah.
Interesting they call her a senator in this case because during the Galactic Civil War, she eventually became, I think, a general, right? I want to say in Return of the Jedi. Wasn't she a general in Return of the Jedi? I think.
I think you're right.
If not, we know she becomes a general during that trilogy that shall not be named.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I just found it interesting that they called her Senator Leia Organa. I mean, maybe in this setting, she was kind of dual hatted as a general or a high ranking member of the Rebel Alliance, but then also she was a senator from Alderaan
Hmm.
in episode 4. So kind of makes sense. I mean, she's from she was born, she wasn't born, but she was raised in Alderaan. She's
Yeah.
a royal member on Alderaan, so it kind of makes sense. But I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I when I think about the generals, my thought is like um, I think about General Leo Organa. I also think about General Solo, General Calrissian. I'm like, um, how do they promote so fast up to general? Like you're
I think,
appointed general.
yeah, I think some of it is like you get battlefield commissions, right? And some
Yeah,
of it's like, oh, well, we just had two generals that got killed in battle, so you're
con-
up, you know, or maybe
congratulations, general. Yeah,
they have a bunch of success in some battles or some decisions, and they're like, oh, we need to give that person more responsibility. So here you go. Yeah,
yeah,
doesn't
totally. Here you go.
quite work like that in the real world, but yeah.
Yeah,
Um, Very interesting too in this, Chris. How C3PO, I think it was, who says that, or what, maybe it wasn't C3PO, maybe it was Hera, either Hera or C3PO, that says that Leia authorized Hera's mission. And
yeah,
she kind of lies, and Mon Mothma pulls her aside after the fact when they dismiss the court and everything, and she's like, "Yeah, Leia didn't authorize your mission, did she?" And then Hera says something to the effect of like, "Well, I mean, eventually."
yeah. Eventually, yeah, and
So
yeah, and Mon Mothma, didn't she say something like, "Well, tell me, is this really a threat?" Something like that, and Hera
yeah,
was like, "Yeah,"
yeah.
So
I love
yeah,
Mon Mothma. I love the character. I loved the character, even though she was very, very small part
mhm,
in Return of the Jedi. But they carried the character over in Rogue One, played by Genevieve O'Reilly. She's played Mon Mothma now in Rogue One. She played it in the trilogy that shall not be named.
yeah,
She played it in Andor. She's playing it now. Like I really like her as Mon Mothma. I like the character. I like Mon Mothma's leadership. I think she's a great leader. She eventually gets to a point where she is exuding confidence. She is very loyal, and she also gives opportunities for people that are either reporting to her or requesting assistance or whatever. She gives them opportunities to take charge and lead,
mhm,
and make decisions on their own, use their brain to make choices that they feel is the best interest of, the Republic or Rebel alliance and safety and all those types of things. So I think she's a really good leader. I'm curious on your thoughts on her as a leader.
yeah. I think she she is a good leader. She's when she was coming out of Andor, it was a very um, interesting way she had to play it, right? Because she has to conceal
Yeah.
a huge part like of herself.
Yeah, because
Um,
she's only a senator
yeah,
and during the time of Andor, right? Because that's pre Rogue One, which means it's pre New Hope. Now we're jumping to a time after Return of the Jedi in
yeah,
this show.
yeah. So her having to because in Andor, right, she's part of the rebellion, but still having to conceal that and act as a senator is interesting. But even in Ahsoka, she has to act with a certain manner and a certain demeanor because it is these other smug senators. She has to know that they are they're against the interest of the Republic, or perhaps they still have rebel ties. So she navigates like as well as she can to be in the position that she can be in, to exert the best influence she can in the circumstance. So she's intelligent and smart, and you know certainly an adept politician to be able to do that and navigate our way through.
Yeah, and I think I would assume that because of her significant role during the early years of the Rebel Alliance forming and standing up
Mhm.
against the Galactic Empire, pre-Galactic Civil War, and all the way through, that's helped her rise up to Chancellor and everything else at this point,
Mhm.
which I think is great because she's proven her loyalty and she has risked literally everything to help make this happen and stop the evil.
Yeah, yeah, for
So it's
sure.
it's wonderful. I didn't mean to kind of go off on a tangent here, but seeing her name and talking about her, I think she'd be an interesting leadership case study. I really think so.
Yeah, you're right. So on the other side of the leaders here, because I think we see more of Thrawn in this episode. Um, and it's interesting. Thrawn, his stormtroopers have this. It seemed like this fierce sense of loyalty
Yeah.
to Thrawn. Thrawn is a he's not an animated like character at all. You know,
Yeah,
he's
he's very reserved.
reserved, yes, calm, calculating, almost when he's talking to someone, it's almost in a pleasant manner. He's
Yeah.
like always totally calm.
Well, he
Um,
was remembering as best I can from the Heir to the Empire book. I mean, I know I started reading it
mhm,
again.
mhm,
Um, from the little bit that I've read, I want to say there was something mentioned in the book because this book is the was the first thing written that took place after Return of the Jedi. There wasn't
yeah,
anything in the Star Wars canon, I don't believe, following the original trilogy until this came along, written by Timothy Zahn, who I think's the greatest author in the Star Wars canon. All the books he's written, he created Thrawn and all the Thrawn books and the Heir to the Empire trilogy. I mean, he's just written so many incredible books. But I believe it was mentioned there how Thrawn was one of the Emperor's top, if not one of or the top strategists
mhm,
in the Empire. So it makes sense, like what you said, how he's calculated,
mhm,
right? That's the way his mind works, right? He's very intelligent. He's always thinking one step ahead or two steps ahead of the enemy. And that's even he even mentioned something like that, I believe, in episode number 8, the final episode of the season.
yeah, yeah, he does, and I mean, he's totally calculating because he mentions things like, well, that was an acceptable loss.
Yeah.
You know, he or or no, now they've this was our real objective, you know, this was a distraction. So that's pretty I think he was played. I'm still kind of seeing how I feel about Thrawn depicted on screen and how I feel about how he was played. Um, but I think it was pretty on par on how he should be played, right? If you've got someone that's just calculating, that's kind of measured, that's cold,
Yeah.
it's probably close to
Yeah, and the guy who plays him in this show, Ahsoka, the live action version, is the same guy who did the voice of Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels. Lars
oh, interesting.
Mikkelsen, same exact actor who did the voice. They brought him in to be the live action. I think he's been great. I've really enjoyed him so far. He's one of those guys where it's like you don't think he's really, he's not one of those like just guys that snap your neck off, but it's almost like
Yeah.
he's too reserved for being a grand admiral, somebody who was right up there at towards the very, very top in the food chain of the empire and their leadership. It's almost scary how menacing he is without being menacing, if that makes sense, right? Like you say he's cold and calculated and reserved and kind of cold blooded in the sense of, oh, that's an acceptable loss, so we can afford to lose that, blah blah blah. It's kind of a scary thing to think about. And then you also have to think about, okay, because he's thinking about all these different scenarios, he's a very obviously a strategic thinker, right? Think of the different
Hmm.
levels of war. You'd have strategic, operational, tactical. He's very, very at the very top strategic, thinking really big picture, right?
Hmm.
Even in episode 8, all the different things that's happening with Ahsoka showing up, which actually I think she shows up. He finds out she shows up and sees it in episode 7, and then carries into episode 8. So he knows they've shown up and they've arrived and this, that, and the other, and he's already like saying things like, oh well, this happens and that's good for her and blah blah blah, and oh yeah, if we lose that regiment of troops or whatever, it's a calculated loss and we can afford to lose that, we've got the time, and she's not doing this and thinking about this, and so you can
Yeah.
see the wheels churning and how he really is multiple steps ahead of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Which is pretty cool.
absolutely.
And it was neat to see how his stormtroopers were just so fiercely loyal, just totally following him. Well, that was good.
Well, I think we know why. Get brought back from the dead. They get killed,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they're rising. I know this is in episode 8. They're
Yeah.
rising up, and I think Ahsoka says something to the effect to Ezra or whatever, like, "Have you ever seen this before?" Whatever, and he's like, "No, like, we've never seen zombie stormtroopers before." Yeah, it's very interesting, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool. Cool. Oh, I'm sorry. To go back to Timothy Zahn,
yeah,
I think he's written Star Trek books too. I was looking at his library of what he's written.
yeah.
So
I think
we'll
so.
take a look at that later. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in touch with him. Can't do it right now, but I'd
Yeah.
like to try to get him on our show at some
Yeah.
point. It'd be amazing to talk about his career as an author because the books he's written, the books he's written have literally established a lot of Star Wars canon. They've created, Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is probably one of the most, if not the most iconic character from the expanded universe
Yeah.
of Star Wars. There's a lot of stuff that he has to be credited with in his work. So it'd be awesome one day to have him on. We'll see if we can make that happen for you guys sometime.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that would be wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
So episode 8, the finale, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, which is
A rip off of The Lion, the Witch of the Wardrobe from
Chronicles of Narnia.
C.S. Lewis. Yep.
Yeah. I guess that's okay if they're honoring C.S. Lewis, right? So if
yeah, I guess. I mean, I like to have seen him, be a little bit more. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So that one was Shin and Baylan Skoll they were like what in 30 seconds of screen time, like at the end, I think, of this particular episode. So they're
they really, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But we get the mothers, I suppose, and them turning
these ancient witches.
Yeah. Which we still don't know a lot about.
No, but they were creepy, man. I mean, a couple of these Ahsoka episodes, a few of these scenes, we could tie into like some Halloween stuff. I mean, I know we didn't get to do our Halloween special this year, although maybe we could go back and do one for post Halloween. But like, weren't they like really creepy? Oh, they were.
Yeah, I thought they were creepy. And then when they turned Morgan into one of them, essentially, that was like, okay,
really creepy. But that like magic sword she had was pretty cool looking, though.
Yeah, and I guess that's got some history in some other either Star Wars comics or no, the animated series. Some history in one of the animated Star Wars shows. I don't know if it was Rebels or something else, but I guess that sword does have some history there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But all of those zombie stormtroopers, that was pretty cool to see and kind of see how they had that escape sequence from all those zombie stormtroopers. That was with Sabine and who else? That was Ezra, like Sabine and Ezra, like getting away from those zombie stormtroopers.
Yeah. That I know they have force powers, but that scene was ridiculous. Like it was absurd. I mean, he jumps this huge gap between the platform and the hangar bay of the Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Oh, I can do it. And he jumps up and then she like force shoves him up. And I'm just like, all right. I mean, they had to make some kind of thrilling looking, I guess, scene or something. I don't know.
And wasn't that like the second time she had used the force? It's like, okay, I'm gonna.
Well, yeah, she couldn't even pull something across a table in the earlier episodes on Ahsoka's ship. Or I mean on Ahsoka's ship. Now all of a sudden she's like, I can do this, and she just force pushes. I mean, it's some of the absurdities in this show were ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. But we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. We do our overall review, and we will do our highly acclaimed wink random Redshirt podcast rating of season 1 of Ahsoka here at the end. But so
absolutely,
the
so this one I think had the best lightsaber battles and sequences. Right there was the great one between Ahsoka and was it Morgan? Was she doing the lightsaber battles with Morgan?
Well, Ahsoka battled Baylan in this, right? At one point in the episode, she battles Baylan. And then she also does battle Morgan after
Mhm.
Morgan's been turned into one of these witches. So there's that. So yeah, there's a few, and then also Sabine and Ezra both use lightsabers when they're fighting these zombie stormtroopers. And
Yeah.
you had, I can't remember what Grand Admiral Thrawn called them, but there was another like specialized set of troops that look almost
Yeah.
like beat up Death Troopers a little bit
Yeah.
from Rogue One. I can't remember what he called them. They weren't commandos, but there was a name, and I don't remember off the top of my head. If you remember, put it in the comments below. But yeah, there were those two they had to fight, and it's like they would stay. Like there was one moment where who was it? Sabine, I think, stabs one of them in the chest with a lightsaber, and he just looks down and then knocks her away. It's like, oh, so they can be stabbed by lightsabers and nothing happens. That's interesting. So they
Yeah.
must be like back from the dead as well or something.
Yeah. That's right. Super zombie.
Yeah, it's
Super
like
zombie
Walking Dead
stormtroopers.
meets Star Wars in this episode.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. And witches.
Yeah,
Well, I guess that goes to the name of the title, the Jedi, the Witch, and the
I
Warlock.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um. So yeah, I mean, it ends up this episode, Ezra ends up hyperspacing back to the Star Wars galaxy, his home galaxy, and Ahsoka and Sabine are effectively stranded on the planet now in
Yeah.
in the remote galaxy.
Interesting too. He shows up. So he takes this shuttle that looks like a pre Galactic Civil War shuttle. So at some
Mm,
point, either during the Clone Wars or in between the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War, um, into the hangar bay of, I believe it's one of those big Mon Calamari cruisers like Home One or something. Um, and Hera and some other people, other rebels, or show up in the hangar deck, right, with their
yeah,
guns ready to go and everything. And then the platform comes down from the shuttle, and it's like one of those famous scenes like Vader and the Emperor
yeah,
coming off with all the gas and stuff. And then this one of those zombie looking stormtroopers come down, and he starts walking out, and then you see Chopper
yeah,
go up to him, and it's like he puts his hand on him, and so Chopper must already know that it's Ezra. I don't know how, but somehow he does. And Hera's like kind of confused by that. And then he takes off his helmet and he's like, "Hey guys, what's up? I'm back." And then
yeah,
Hera's like, "Oh my gosh!" And then they hug, and that's an interesting scene. So it's interesting how Sabine and Ahsoka were okay with trading their lives in a sense for Ezra's life in this case, and sacrificing that ability to get back home in order to get Ezra home, which I was kind of confused about because I would have thought they would have all wanted to go back in order to be able to be ready for Thrawn, and now it's just Ezra comes back. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he'll have a way to get back like some more space whales to go get them or something, and I have
yeah.
no idea.
Well, I was confused too. I felt like, hey, aren't you guys a little bit too comfortable being stranded here? Don't you want to go back and like help?
Yeah.
Because you were worried about Thrawn getting back there. Now Thrawn is back there, and wasn't your whole point to keep like Thrawn from getting back there? So, you guys are just a little bit too content now. I felt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Very, very, yeah, very content. Interesting. The line that Ahsoka uses to Sabine, we talked about this before too, Chris, where she
Mhm.
says, um, that they're hopeful, but she says Ezra is where he needs to be, and so are we. It's time to move on.
Yeah. Time
And
to
then,
move on. Yeah.
yeah, I don't. You're right. They seem a little too content with that. It's almost like, oh, well, we're here, so whatever. That to me was I think a bit of a stretch given the fact of all the work they took to get there. They're
Yeah.
just okay with never going back. And I did like that they put Anakin's Force Ghost at the end. And I think that's kind of a nice touch there. You kind of see it on his face that maybe Anakin's ghost is happy
Mhm.
with what Ahsoka's done, pleased with where she's at in her journey and who she's developed into at this point. Because it's Anakin's ghost. It's not evil Anakin. This is
Yeah.
pre-infection by you know Palpatine slash Sidious. But I thought that was a nice little touch to end that with the Force Ghost there.
Yeah. It was. It was a nice touch. I mean, so on the planet, if they I don't know what to make of it, like saying, "Hey, it's time to move on." Um,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's something on the planet, like if that's where they need to be, maybe there's something on the planet where they need to search, they need to seek, they need to discover, they need to get that'll help them back at their home galaxy. If they alluded to that, I could see that. But
Well, I mean, they say it's impossible to travel between the galaxies, right? But yet space whales can take them, and this really big ring with really big engines somehow gets them there. And
yeah,
oh, by the way, going back, apparently the ring and the engines are so powerful they can haul a friggin' Star Destroyer back. So
yeah,
apparently it's so hard to go back and forth that you can use lots of different ways to get back. That to me left a lot to be desired. But we do know that towards the very end of the episode, I think this was right before we see that scene with Ahsoka and Sabine being somehow content and Anakin's ghost and all that.
mhm,
We do know that the ring and Thrawn and all them arrive back in their own back in the Star Wars galaxy, as you called it, Chris, on the outskirts of a planet called Dathomir, which is known in the Star Wars galaxy in the Star Wars universe. So that's good that they're using a semi known planet. And I'm assuming, just because the way they left it, I'm assuming that the reason they went there is because that's where they're gonna kind of rally the troops, and where the Empire is gonna get rebuilt is from that planet somewhere.
yeah,
In a somewhat secluded area. Maybe the Rebel Alliance doesn't know about it, and or the Rebel, not the Rebel Alliance anymore, the Republic, the New Republic, and they have a chance to start rebuilding. Maybe.
yeah. Oh, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's talk about some final thoughts here about this overall, this first season of Ahsoka, Chris. I'll let you go first because I know you have some very passionate thoughts about what you thought.
Yeah.
That was really redundant. I apologize, but
No, 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 it's all
you have some
good.
thoughts about what you thought. So that
Hey,
sounded so stupid.
all good, all good.
uh,
I mean, so the title of the show, the title of this is Ahsoka. From the very first episode of Ahsoka, I thought it was a hard and a difficult entry point because so much of this is about the characters in Star Wars Rebels. I have not watched Star Wars Rebels. You have not.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm so I've been watching through it with my kids. We
okay,
are almost to season 3 of the 4 seasons. It's really
okay,
good. The episodes go
okay,
pretty quick. It's a really, really good show.
okay. That's good. That's good then.
Yeah. I highly recommend it if you get some time, Chris. You can breeze through 'em. I think each season's only got like 14 episodes, and each episode's I think less than 30 minutes or something. So it goes pretty quick, but it's a really good show.
It's good. It's good. So much of it is the Star Wars Rebels, and I didn't know the characters from Rebels, but I felt that even in the first episode, it was more about Sabine, than necessarily than it was about like Ahsoka. Um, yeah, which it's yeah, I mean that would be okay, but I think it just was too far for me on the scale, and I felt like okay, Ahsoka got maybe pushed too far in on the side in her own series. So I had issues with that, and definitely, I had issues with Anakin being brought
Yeah.
in, and the missed
The way they
opportunities
used
of
him.
Anakin.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I just have this feeling of disappointment in the series. I mean, there was potential there and always great like production value, and Balin's Skull and Shin I thought was really neat because you had a master and an apprentice there on the dark side. Um, I think they're going to find a way to redeem Shin in some way. That's how I felt at the. We'll see. That's how I felt at the last episode there. Um, so, but having that dynamic where there's uh, a dark side master and apprentice, and then you have a light side master and apprentice with Ahsoka and Sabine was good, but mm, more Ahsoka would have been, I think more Ahsoka character development would have been good to have for this series for sure. So
Yeah.
those are, yeah, so some of my like I wanted to like it more and I didn't end up doing that. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this from what I read, this was Dave Filoni's baby. This was
Hmm.
all him. The show, I think, the writing, this was his show. And so I think there was a lot of potential going into this show of what they could have done. We this has been a common theme, right?
Hmm.
Was a lot of these shows lately, the potential. Obi-Wan wasn't bad, but I think there were some missed opportunities there. But
Hmm.
I overall, for the most part, I liked it. And you guys can go back and listen to our review of Obi-Wan as a whole, as a series. I know they're going to make more of it. Um, Book of Boba Fett was a massive disappointment. There was a ton of potential with that show, given that character, right? The fact that
Yeah.
character only had 12 minutes, less than 12 minutes of screen time in the original trilogy. And then you got a little bit of him as a kid with his dad, Jango Fett, or really it's a clone of him. But anyways, that was a massive letdown. Andor, we felt was super, super slow.
Hmm.
There were some good things about it, and they called it like Star Wars for adults, but there's no such thing as Star Wars for adults, guys. Star Wars was originally created to appeal to 12-year-olds. Just so happened that it appealed to everybody. So when someone says, "Oh, that's Star Wars for adults," bull crap. There's no such thing. It's just Star Wars, all right? Um, I think that that's been a common trend throughout a lot of this new Star Wars, even the new trilogy. My goodness, Chris, what they could have done with a new trilogy, and then look what the turd that we got with the new trilogy. And I apologize if that makes somebody upset if you love the new trilogy. My kids love it, so that's cool, and they like Star Wars because of watching the new trilogy.
Hmm.
So that's great. But I think that's been the common theme throughout is missed opportunities
Yeah.
missed opportunities amongst these different shows. And with Ahsoka was no different. I 100% agree with you. I think Ahsoka was supposed to be, I feel like about her, but I felt like we spent more time with the other characters, which,
Yeah.
you know, mixed in and interwoven is fine. But it felt basically like a big Star Wars Rebels reunion, which
Totally.
Ahsoka does appear in Star Wars Rebels. She's a part of it, but she's not in the whole show. Like we are most of the way through season 2, me and the kids, and Ahsoka didn't come in, I believe, until at some point in season 2. So there was quite a while where they were establishing all these different characters and the crew of the Ghost ship and everything like that. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. There were some moments where I just shook my head and go, my gosh, this is ridiculous.
Hmm.
The whole force pushing Ezra, that Sabine couldn't even pull something across the table. Now she's force pushing him in the air up to get onto a Star Destroyer hangar bay platform. I mean, it was just so absurd.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um there were some things I did like about Ahsoka though as a whole. Like you said, the choreography, some of the choreography was great. Some of the cinematography I think was great, and the scenes. The zombie stormtroopers, I gotta admit, that was kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, I did like that. That was neat. The whole scene where they're like, "Hey, have you seen this before?" They're like, "No, never experienced this before." Um, I did I did like a few of those creatures they threw in on that new planet with the like the nomad creatures. I think they
Hmm.
were called, what we call them, like the Noti or something, Noti or something like that. Um, the like wolf looking big dog things they rode. I liked
Oh
those.
yeah. Yeah.
Sabine was able to tame one. Those were pretty cool. Very Lord of the Rings feel, especially at the end when Balin is standing on that like the platform, which is like the arm extension of that massive statue guy. Very Lord of the Rings esque, I think. I mean, heck, we had J.R. Tolkien Lord of the Rings feel, and we had a title stolen from C.S. Lewis, The Jedi, the Witch, and the
Ah,
Wardrobe.
yeah,
I
yeah.
shouldn't say stolen, a play off of that. And C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien were actually, my understanding is they were friends in real life and
Yeah.
admired each other's work and actually played off each other's work. So that was pretty cool. I'm assuming that was intentional. Um, but yeah, I think Ahsoka was a letdown. Another letdown, unfortunately.
Yeah. I have
Yeah.
to, yeah, I have to agree.
I think of all the Star Wars series that they've made, I probably have to say Obi-Wan was my favorite of all of them so far, of the ones they made.
Yeah. And
And
I'm
oh, by the
biased
way,
because, yeah, I love Obi-Wan. So, yeah.
no, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
fine. Um, I did think Ahsoka was a little slow at times.
Mhm.
I did. I think there was some. I get they were rebuilding relationships right from Rebels and so forth, but yeah, we'll see. So let's give us a rating. Let's tell everyone our rating, Chris, on a scale of 1 to 5 comm badges. 1 being the worst thing you've ever seen, and 5 being you're about ready to burst at the seems like a scene from Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, what what are you rating it, Chris? 1 to 5. Give
Goodness.
me your I might have an idea as to what you're gonna put, but what's your comm badge rating here?
Yeah. This one is probably my lowest. It's 2.5 comm badges. So
Mm,
we'll do that. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. That is, I guess, a 50%. I'll do that when you think
Yeah,
about that. Yeah. So, um,
50% Rotten Tomatoes score.
yeah, we'll see what happens if they do a second season. Yeah. May maybe it'll be great a second season, or maybe now it's just a bloody mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about yours? What is yours?
Okay. Well, I'm kind of torn here. I could
Yeah.
give it two
Yeah.
different. I could give it two different ratings.
Oh.
I'm gonna go with a. I'm gonna go with a 2.
Yeah.
There were some things in it that were just absurd. I teeter between a 2 and a 3. A 3 because there were some characters I really enjoyed. Like I actually really liked Balin Skull. I
Yeah.
thought he was a very complex character, and actually, it's very unfortunate that the actor who played him died in real life. So he filmed all of his scenes for this season. So if they bring Ahsoka back for another season, I guess they'll have to recast the character. I'm assuming, or
Hmm.
write the character out. Maybe I don't know, but he's very complex. This idea of this new empire, and he's not really with the empire. He's not a Jet anymore. He's kind of like his own thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I think that could be work. They could work with that character. It's unfortunate that I think it was a guy named Ray Stevenson or something like that who played the character really well. I thought he played the character phenomenal. Really, really impressed with the actor and the way the character was portrayed and everything. So I really like that. Like some of these little alien creatures. Disney hasn't always been great with creating new alien races in Star Wars, but there were some good ones. Loved the role of Mon Mothma. So there were some things I did like about Ahsoka, uh, which is why I could lean towards a 3. But I'm going to go with a 2.
Hmm.
I like Grand Admiral Thrawn. I thought it was played very well by Lars Mikkelsen, I think's his name. But I'm gonna go with a 2 for now because there were just too many things that I'm like, oh gosh, this is awful or ridiculous or whatever. Like for example, besides the whole force push, the stupid ring ship. So just
Yeah.
because you build really big engines, that means you go faster and farther. I don't believe that. I just don't think this is ridiculous to try to throw science into Star Wars. But that doesn't add up for me. I'm not a scientist or an astrophysicist or anything, but it just doesn't add up that you took some old engines and made this big ring, and now all of a sudden, and then, oh, by the way, you needed every ounce of that to get there, but now all of a sudden you can haul a Star Destroyer back with
Oh
you.
yeah.
Like, that's absurd. Like, it's just absurd. And the space whales, I know that's from Rebels at the end of it, but it's like, that's absurd too. Like, come on, like, yeah, without saying like another 1,000 times, like I'm, a freshman in high school again. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll go with a 2 comm badges out of 5.
2 and 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of right there. We usually
Yeah.
are. We usually
Yeah.
have pretty similar ratings, I would say.
Yeah.
And
I think
we don't
so.
talk about our ratings usually before. It's
No, this
usually
is like,
we just
yeah. Yeah. This is right
yeah,
here where we started talking about Ahsoka. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. It's raw. It's fresh. But
Uh,
I want to ask you this question, Chris.
yeah.
Now that you've watched Ahsoka and we've talked about it, do you feel, and we've talked about this before when we did an episode very early on when we started our podcast, It's entitled, it's an audio only. So if you want to go listen to it, feel free to. It's called Has Disney Ruined Star Wars? And we talk a lot about the new trilogy that's
Mhm.
non-canon that Chris will not mention by name. Um, and whether or not Disney's ruined Star Wars. So with some of these shows we reviewed and now with Ahsoka, do you think that Disney, and we mentioned this in that episode, do you think Disney has really watered down the Star Wars universe to the point to where it's either getting worse or maybe it's getting better? I don't know. What do you think, real quick?
They've certainly made it more convoluted. And that's where you, it's yeah, it's definitely more convoluted where you just don't know where to start. Um,
Yeah.
and you don't know what the relationships are. And that's the problem of introducing like so many of these interconnected series. They
Yeah.
they needed to be like uh more independent so that they're not bogged down with trying to make all of these relations like they did with Star Wars Rebels and Ahsoka, like they tried to do with um the Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian, I feel, is probably the most independent that they got because they had this
Yeah.
idea of the Mandalorian and they could run with it and they can go and they could do that. But man, once you start bringing in these characters like Ahsoka or Obi-Wan, then you're automatically tied. You've automatically constrained yourself when you say, "Hey, I want to make a series of Ahsoka." Well, okay, now you've got to go back and look at um all of what's canon in the animated series so that you don't make a misstep or make a huge mistake. So,
Yeah, Ahsoka really requires you to have done your homework and watched a ton of Star Wars anime between Clone Wars and um, Star Wars Rebels.
mhm,
I
yeah,
I was thankful that the kids and I were going through and watching. I know we didn't finish it, but watching through Rebels at the time I started was watching Ahsoka
yeah,
to it keep that fresh with some of the characters and things like that. But I agree. It very much feels like Star Wars is now becoming like the MCU. With the MCU,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
so much. And if you watch movies out of order, now there's things happening or Easter eggs and stuff being mentioned that you're like, well, wait, I don't understand that. Well, you would have if you would have watched these 17 movies in a row in a certain order.
yeah,
That's how it is with the MCU, too. There's some great movies, but I feel like with the MCU now, there's just so much and there's so much intertwined and so much. You got to watch Thor 1, Thor 2, but then you got to watch Ant-Man 1, then you got to jump over and watch this one and then Avengers, and then it's just too convoluted. It's too
yeah,
convoluted, it's too messy. And I feel like Star Wars is the same thing, which they're both controlled by Disney, so I guess it makes sense why it's happening that way.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it makes the actual when you have these series like this, that it makes the movies less special, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Don't you
Mm,
remember when we were growing up and it was just the original trilogy and that
hmm.
was it? And then if you wanted more, you went to the expanded universe books, which are
Yeah,
amazing, by the way. I mean, not every single one, but a lot of them are really, really, really good.
yeah,
And you Star Wars live through your imagination and what you could envision that the book was painting those images. There were some fantastic books, and
yeah. You
so
would, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because
uh,
the original like trilogy, you would just rewatch it, right? You'd watch it 20, 30 times.
oh
And
yeah, I
that's
wore out
yeah,
some VHS tapes on that. Let me tell you what.
yeah, yeah. And then that's okay. You can do that. But now it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you've got the movies, but then you have hundreds of hours of content of these other series that are supposed to be connected to the same universe, and just like, no,
Yeah.
then that's too much.
Yeah, and then we get the prequels, and that was great. You had 6 movies now. You could
Yeah,
go from episode 1 to episode 6, right? And
yeah.
that was great. And that added a little bit more and just enough to kind of help tell the tale that happened leading up to episode
Hmm.
4, 5, and 6. And I thought that was fantastic, and it gave us a lot. I don't count the special revised edition that George Lucas did because that was really just like a hey, we're gonna remake the original trilogy, quote unquote, fix some stuff, which some things actually got made worse, and
Yeah,
then it's where you use it to push a ton of merchandise and sell a lot of stuff, which they did. But Yeah, I just the Star Wars universe to me has just gotten watered down, convoluted, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think the Clone Wars animated series and Rebels did add a ton from into the Star Wars universe without making it too crazy. They focus on a little bit of time here, right? Whereas
Yeah.
all these shows that have come around since the since Disney took over and they did the movie, the new trilogy, um it's all over the place. You're in each series is in a different time period. Now,
Yes.
other than like I guess
Yes.
Book of Boba Fett, because Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian overlap because they were that same kind of time period, right? But stuff's just all over the map. You're like, well, wait a second, when does this take place, and how does this fit into the Star Wars universe and the timeline? And it just makes your head want to explode. So
Yeah.
it's crazy. But
Yes.
let us know if you're listening or watching. Let us know. Send us a message. Send us an email. Hit us up on social media. If you feel completely opposite, if you think we're way off our rockers and we're insane, then let us know. If you agree with us, let us know. We're fine. We'd like to get feedback and hear from you guys and gals out there, and let us know, how we're doing and what your thoughts are of the given topic we're discussing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, but this has been fun, Chris. It was good to,
Yeah.
even though maybe the show hasn't been what we thought, it was still fun to jump back into it, jump back on here and talk about our passion again, and take a
Yeah.
little mental break from life and work and everything else, right? And we look forward to our next episode. We're going to jump back to Enterprise and we're going to finish out the show, our look at the overall show, and we're going to talk about our favorite episodes from season 3 and season 4, and then wrap the series up like we have the other Legacy Trek shows, with our rating and give some final thoughts. And that should be a great time. We look forward to having Dominic and Connor on with us at some point down the road, once the strike's over and they can actually talk about stuff. So
That would be most excellent, most fun to do. So
yeah, it'll
yeah.
be a blast. And we had a blast with them at the Shuttle Pod Show live event. It was great. And yeah, we look forward to more of that. So anyways,
Nice.
yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody. As always, again, be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. We're all over the interwebs, Chris.
All over the interwebs.
That's right. That's right. Whether you have dial-up AOL or mice. Well, I take it. That's not true.
Well,
We're not all over because we don't have MySpace. Although a lot of people don't have MySpace anymore either. But we're not on MySpace, so if you're looking for us there, you're not going to find us.
MySpace still exists as far as I
Oh, it
remember.
does. I wasn't sure if it did. But if you don't know
Yeah.
what MySpace is, you don't know what we're talking about. Just disregard. This isn't the social media platform you're looking for. To quote a famous line from your favorite character.
That's right.
Well, a play on that line. I'm not quoting the line, but anyways. So, all right, everybody, take care. Thanks so much for watching as always, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.